Yeah, I'm just going to do a run through this. Did you post the link in the chat
I did.
already? So there should be a link in the chat for the meet as well as the live stream for the Figma link that leads to Big Jam, which, if you don't know, is Figma's brainstorming group collaboration platform, competing with Miro and Mural and some others. I'm going to run through kind of the basics of this exercise here. This is a technique we often use, especially in UX and design thinking workshops. It's called affinity mapping. So what we're going to do is brainstorm our goals for 2025 individually, and then we're going to come together and group those by related areas. And then we're going to have an agreed on list of goals that everyone is kind of part of. And then we're going to do best to prioritize those goals. So here's some prompts for how we can write these post-its. We will spend 15 minutes, maybe, coming up with things individually, and then we'll come up. That might be too long. 15. Let's shoot for 15. See how that feels. There's a kind of a template here. In 2025, I or we want to blank. Kind of a template. And when we group them, we'll spend some time thinking about how they best group together and name them. And then we will, this is the verticality segment, where we will try to, actually there's you can really see that? Over here, there's like a pyramid. So at the top, we need to think about if we could only afford to do one thing, what would it be? And the next tier, and have a broader set. So let's go ahead and jump into that picture. And why don't we just kind of go around the room, go clockwise. So start here, and you can just talk. He did. He just played a video game.
So currently,
Yeah, well, just quickly share your thoughts. Looks like most people have about 3 to 5.
So we're not going through all of them.
Well,
No, go ahead and go through all of them. Just
yours.
Just yours, yeah.
So I'm working to connect our naturalist and Orcasound communities.
wait, what? It's all on big screen?
Yeah.
I'm building skills and knowledge for mapping geotemporal data. I hope to connect with several other organizations and external people working in conservation in the Sailor Sea. I hope to create a portfolio piece to be able to sell work, make some tools for other community science programs, trying to make this sustainable. And I'd like to find ways to lower the costs for Orcasound to create and maintain high quality tools.
Okay, mine are the green ones in the top right. I have 5 of them. I have increase a particular KPI, which for like a whale sightings shore-based people, with the KPI is what percentage of actual whale passes did I get an Orcasound alert for in real time? That's my KPI, and I want to increase that. It's really bad right now, and I want it to be decent. Like that. Can only get so far. Next one is principle in development is that an AI detection source should be just another detection source like any other human, together with reputation and everything. So if you want to have different AI models, each of them have a different reputation and they get moderated the same as any other human does. Third one is to improve uptime of audio streams by doing things like improving the monitoring effectiveness, better docs for troubleshooting, automated troubleshooting, things like that. So Orcasound Monitor fits into that, as does docs. but that's my overall one. Fourth one is to figure out how to fund a hydrophone at Andrews Bay. And the fifth one is to add and integrate more hydrophones to improve knowledge of well location and behavior.
I guess I'll go next. I'd like to, I mean, this is kind of maybe a little nebulous, but I'd like to build a positive feedback loop for Orcasound where any energy slash funding that we put in gets returned to us into increased capacity to build and engage more the next year. I'd love to establish a formal governance body made up of different important interest groups. I'd like us to, it'd be cool to create a premium or paid features for the listener community. We're soon having user accounts. I'd like to see us successfully engage our community to take a conservation action. I think that'd be pretty cool. More personally, I'd like to finish building the data pipeline from the live audio stream all the way through to like golden record, individual cataloged calls, and then the successful sending of relevant notifications, and then data to partner sites or orgs. And then I'd love to have a thriving user community on Orcasound that interacts with not just us, but with each other.
It's kind of similar ones for me, Skin. I'll start with the nebulous one as well for me, which is to help in any way I can to make Orcasound self-sustaining and self-perpetuating, more than just sustaining, but perpetuating, sustainably making progress on stuff. Of course, I want to work with everyone on doing this. And then kind of related to that is why make it sustainable and self-perpetuating? Well, I think we also need to I want to figure out clear ways to demonstrate how Orcasound is providing value, especially and ultimately to the Southern residents, but also to the CLSC and beyond ecosystems, make sure we know what we're doing. And then I also want to make listeners happy. I would like to build things that this year I like to build things that users love so much they want to tell everyone about Orcasound. Because that's how excited they are. I also want to engage more sources of potential users, for example, those who are leaving closed platforms, or casual users who are interested in Orcas but don't know they can engage and participate. I also want to build things that are positive return on investment, as Skinner kind of said, that the features pay for themselves. And then I also want to revisit Orcanode. Specifically and streaming stuff and make some upgrades, and it sorely needs a new version and lots of changes. And then also make Orcasound into a lively community experience by adding things like user accounts, profiles, and stuff that lets users make it a two-way street where they can actually engage and give feedback. And then finally share more with the world what we do at Orcasound, and let everyone know that we're working on cool stuff and they can volunteer and work and contribute and use the data and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, let's see, I started with accelerate emails requesting moderation candidates. We've got about a 15-minute delay right now. I don't understand why that should be there. It's probably something that could get fixed and reduced to a couple minutes. I know we have to have some buffer for uploads and time to move from Amazon to Microsoft, and then running the algorithm that it has to be able to do all that in under a minute to keep up with everything new coming in. So, within 2 or 3 minutes, it should be able to send an email out, I think. Like to build out the hydrophone network so that we've got enough hydrophones to allow continuous tracking throughout the Sailor Sea. Find my other stuff here.
Yeah. Mockingbird.
Like to add and frequently update calls to action. So those can either be engaging in political things or restoration events or beach cleanups or whatever. I'd like to incorporate directional capabilities into some sites. I'd like to incorporate research grade hydrophones into some sites so we can do accurate noise measurements and cover the full frequency band audible to killer whales. I'd like to develop Orca Learn into a self-guided tutorial. So instead of just putting the information out there that people need, make it something that they can kind of teach themselves how to use. I had some more things here. Yeah, so I'd like to develop a plan to reach out to local businesses for funding. I think there are a lot of companies in the area that would like to help us out. They just need to be asked. And then develop a funding plan based on value to profit groups. For example, we've gone to the shipping industry to get money through Quiet Sound, and the oil industry through WDFW, and the fishing industry probably has some skin in the game for what we're doing, and the military can also make good use of what we're doing. And there's money there, and we should be able to get a little piece of it for our work. I think that's all I have.
So I'll quickly go over the yellow stickies with some input from Val, who's been texting me a couple of thoughts. We resonated on the idea of improving Orcanode and then standardizing it across all nodes via some new swarm management tool. At the same time, if I can engage Paul a little bit, like maybe it's worth re-exploring like FLAC and Dash, just out of my personal curiosity, and the fact that I see my bioacoustic colleagues using FLAC more and more. So it might be a way to reduce some of the HLS stress in the community over time, and timestamp stress. Add a note on the outer coast, and I noticed that somebody from Mbari was listening in, so I think my son's graduating this June, so one of my goals for the next couple of visits down there would be to get over to Mbari and just hand John Ryan one of our streaming things just to see what happens. Just hand him the hardware and see whether he'll try that in addition to YouTube. I'd love to work with you, Skander, on what does it look like to draft the bylaws, even if we don't have an entity yet. And I want to test your platform for cooperatives if that turns out to be helpful and useful. Let's try. In about a year, I'm going to take a sabbatical. So part of me is trying to figure out a way to empower more of you to lead. So I like that path as a potential solution. I'm also excited about the conservation call to action, just sort of prioritizing that as a feature to at least design and test. Or maybe just stick on the end of our emails just to see if people start to use it instead of what we currently use, which is like a few links to old blog posts. And then how that CCTA gets chosen is I think that's a really interesting question that maybe can tie back into the governance questions. Brennan, we've worked a lot on the onboarding materials, but it feels like, especially after this, we get input from everybody else, like revising the onboarding from some pretty high level, Democracy Lab and GitHub, fundamental organizational README down, something I'm excited to keep working on. Personally, I want to use Python more and get I'm in Python dependency hell, which Skander knows about. I want to get Python working on a local environment. More of the tutorials we put together and just sort of being more facile with bioacoustic software over time. I think we're on our way to doing this, but I just wanted to set it as my own goal, is help groups up in Anacortes get a hydrophone in Rosario Strait. So I think that's going to happen. And then Val's last one is he's just said wants to get shipnoise.net live in some form. We have a prototype and lots of pieces, but it's not in production and starting to affect change. So sounds like that's one of his goals.
Okay, so I just made them sequentially sort of. So my first goal is to get the noise estimate pipeline shape and it will be both archived and real time. And by noise estimate, that can mean just the general spectrogram I was talking about. That could be used for sound in general. So maybe noise is not the right term. Somebody's noise is song or something. So, then I would like to use that kind of like the generated product to study quiet times over long period of times. And because I think that can be formulated as a more typical research study, I'd like to also get funding for it. The future goal would be also to integrate the quiet times with auxiliary variables and get basically to try to understand, get some value for conservation. And by that, I mean like, this is the time when, this is how much quiet time the whales have versus this is how much, this is their action during that time and how they behave, which people have done these kind of studies, but we will need to integrate more variables, because some of the kind of the AIS data, the radar data, and so on. I'd like to improve the data access tutorials and onboarding materials. Like when I was looking yesterday, even at the general AWS kind of entry point for the open data, there's kind of one line about how you get the data, but I think for now, it's mainly the people who are kind of like pretty kind of independent people can figure it out, and a lot of people get dropped. I think newcomers get dropped at that point, I believe. And I realize we don't have anything like, we have way more stuff that only we know we have. And a lot of people don't know we have that, and they get lost. And I would like to revamp the data access libraries, which now they do stuff, but they're not properly maintained. Like dependencies, we are pinned to some old dependencies, and testing is scarce and so on. And I added the bout segmentation, kind of like maybe case of, now trying to get that from the data that we already have stored and use it as a use case to automate that, because we have now all these noise estimates. And maybe it's easier if we just grab it once we have that data. But that's just as an example. That's it.
Great. So I would like to have ship noise deployed. I would like to have the redesign of Orcasound deployed. Like to update Orcasound's personas based off of interview studies with users, including identifying potential new personas. I would like to have a global navigation header and footer deployed across Orcasound. I'd like to deploy OrcaLearn. I'd like to deploy user-based improvements to OrcaSite. I'd like to also improve notification system, both the sign-up opt-out flows, as well as the channels, SMS, push, etc., based on user preferences.
Okay, so I have a bunch here. I'll just say quickly. I want to, first of all, deliver a complete product cycle from discovery definition through design, launch, and testing. So that's kind of related to this other one where I'm interested in building a front end in React based on Figma designs. I am interested in figuring out what it takes to create a native mobile app. Part of what I want to do is unify different initiatives in the Orcasound umbrella into a kind of a product experience. I want to allow public users to access hydrophone recordings rather than just the live streams. I want kind of popular adoption of the app among kind of the orca watching concerned community of Seattle. I guess a greater awareness and popularity than it currently enjoys. I want to enable users to experience sound visually through spectrograms and contribute to science through annotation. I want to build user community connections on the app to foster dialogue between water listeners, scientists, and conservationists. I want to discover kind of conservation value from the data, which I think of as parallel in some ways to the conservation value, just kind of numbers on the app. And just taking a percentage of people on the app and direct them towards such and such. But then there's also this like, how do we activate the data towards conservation value, which to me speaks more to the data cooperative side of things. I want to develop narrative storytelling vision and mock-ups to help with grant funding and revenue. And I want to work with machine learning engineers to find AI opportunities that improved over what we have now, and be part of that. So I think this. Oh, and I also had maybe there's a stretch goal: design an immersive interactive experience for a museum or similar space. Okay, so that's cool. I love that, and I heard a lot of great things that, in some ways, intersect, and in other ways represent unique perspectives. So what we want to do now is everybody jump in and start moving everybody else's Post-its around, and group our Post-its into similar ideas. That make sense? So we will give that effort.
I forget, do you like to like create a little banner label?
Yeah, that's ideally the next step. Once we've kind of gotten together, we're going to agree on what each of those groups is called.
Can you frame what question
About
was?
fundraising.
Because is it,
Yeah,
what's the most
I think
important,
that's
what's the
fair.
prioritization for you in your own work? What's the most important thing for the Orcasound organization as a whole to spend, mental capacity on? Just frame the question, right?
Yeah. I think I like the way Dave's framing it. I mean, in terms of what is how do these stack up in terms of, if we have to say that one thing is our goal, that all other things flow from.
Yeah.
Orcasound could be, we could think of this as a conservation organization as opposed to a science organization or
That's what the MOU
a
mission
media
statement says.
organization, I guess.
The primary goal is to help conserve the SRKWs while also blah, blah, blah. That's the mission statement.
So from,
Something
So-
like Orca Learn may do really well at developing empathy because people go around saying, hey, I now speak Southern resident. And, it's a very complex communication system, and I've started to understand it and how special these whales are because they know how to speak it too, or maybe something that 2 or 3 people want to do and nobody else will pay much attention to it. You just have to try it and see what happens. And,
Yeah, right. And when you talk to people just layman kind of level, almost every conversation will include the question, so are you trying to understand what the orcas are saying? And we will try to explain, no, we just want to know where they are. I will say, oh,
That'd be a good thing to
that's
have a
more-
fact
No, I don't want to
page.
know that.
What are they saying? Well,
What are they saying?
that is a frequently asked question, right? So we should have a fact.
they say I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I mean, what I often tell people, I do want to know that too, and what I often tell people is hard to know what they're saying if they're not around, right? So,
So that's part of the answer, right? The
Yeah,
frequently
yeah.
asked questions, what are they saying, right?
That's the next
Oh, you
question.
take this as an opportunity to say,
yeah, absolutely.
here's our work that we're doing to try to eventually answer that question.
So for the conservation action, what is the top priority? If you could,
I think improving food availability
Yeah,
is the
that's-
top priority. So getting people involved in habitat restoration projects is a good bite-sized thing for
Not
people to
buying.
do. They can spend a couple hours on the weekend occasionally working on that, and if you get enough people doing it, it'll add up. On the political side, advocating for government to do salmon recovery, and that's things like protecting water quality, protecting water flow, uh, improving access to habitat, whether it's culvert removal or dam removal. So lobbying government to do the right thing, kind of the other side of prey availability, that they can contribute to a lot. Disturbance is a big concern. That's an area where government has pretty well made the right rules to limit disturbance, or at least state government has. Federal government hasn't caught up. At least while the whales are in Washington, they're pretty well protected from disturbance now. Toxic chemicals are something that we worry a lot about. Increasing prey availability is one way to deal with that. Cleaning up toxic chemicals would be the other approach. So there are Superfund sites that we could ask people to expedite cleanup of. A lot of toxic chemicals are already in biomass, so we can't really do anything about that, because if we take the biomass and incinerate it to destroy the chemicals, the whales don't have anything to eat. If they do eat it and it's poisonous, that's not good for them either. So
these are all problems. How can Orcasound?
Oh, that's why adding those calls to actions to the webpage.
So you just want to, so
listening-
just the fact that we have people on a site.
Kind of like, while we have your attention, here's what you can be doing.
So to make that work, then we need to get more people on the site.
We need to get more people on the site, and we need to update the call to action so it's current. Like, we've got a legislative session that'll go on for a couple months, and then nothing's going to be happening for 8 months. And so during those 8 months, you need to do something different. Planting seasons are usually fall, winter, and spring, but you're usually not doing a lot of restoration work over the summer. So you won't have a lot of messages about restoration activities over the summer. Summer is kind of a recreational time, so educating people about noise and whales in the summer, maybe where the message focus that time of year.
So quick time check, we are at 4:40 PM. Just want to let y'all know, and we'll probably wrap up here in 20 minutes. So yeah, keep talking, or whatever we need to do for the next 20 minutes.
All right, clarifying question on the mission statement, because I realize now after this discussion that I have colored it, and I want to see if it's the same as everybody else's, right? Because the mission statement talks about our primary goal is to conserve, while also monitoring and studying the underwater sounds and so on. As Orcasound, I think our focus is the sound aspect and not conservation in general. Is that a shared understanding? Because we're not talking about things like how do we use cameras to do visual detections and things like that, or should be, scope question. Because we're called Orcasound, and so it means audio, at least to me, but I just now realize that I'm biased in when I put up my sticky notes, it was completely biased by the sound aspect, not the how do I conserve orcas aspect. What's our scope?
I think sound is our tool for motivating conservation.
Yeah.
So, like Adrian was saying, we need to drive more people to the website, and the better we present sound, presumably the more people we'll get.
Yeah. I think
Or if we can get
I think our scope is sound.
more hydrophones in.
In that sense, we have the
Our scope is
same,
sound?
we have the same goal as, because we need a hidden product that will self-sustain itself on advertising revenue,
Yeah.
I mean, another point here, to Adrian's point earlier about like, there's a lot of orca organizations, right? But I think what's unique about Orcasound is the sound part. There's not a lot of orca sound organizations. There are a few to be fair, but that is also the interesting combo. So that's why, but that being said, it doesn't have to be the point forever, but I think it's a good starting point at the very least, and especially to where we are right now.
It does affect how I prioritize our stuff. It's I'll prioritize things that have a sound focus and leave the non-sound things to other organizations.
Yeah,
That's
for now.
Concord.
And then, like Sound Action wants to do both video and audio.
Yeah.
And we can help them out, the audio part. We can also say you're on your own.
How important is it to take our software and connect video to it to say, you know, should Orcasound have a camera there? Is that within our scope? I didn't realize that, or I would have stuck that on a sticky before, so.
Yeah, well, I think we're leaving the camera decision up to the site hosts. So if Orca Network wants a camera, or Sound Action wants a camera, or Orca Conservancy wants a camera, they can do that without losing their Orcasound membership.
I'll reserve the right to put this on at next year's summit to say, okay, if we have AI detections, do we include camera feeds to get better tags on our detections? I mean.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think we should always update it. I think we should always update it, but I think the sound is the place to start. And
So for this year-
I wouldn't say it's a hard limit. It's not like a
Yeah.
ceiling that we could only do sound forever.
But to Adrian's marketing point, right now, the sound part is the whole, you know, marketing thing with Orcasound. Why would you come here? It's got the sound, right?
Fountain, I think, had something.
I guess we can think about whether adding cameras would contribute to the conservation mission.
I think it would.
Yeah.
Orcasound could be.
Anyway, I don't want to open a new topic now, right?
Well, I guess, okay, so, you know, if I
20
can,
minutes here. Let's
if I can very quickly kind of maybe try to summarize that, you know, increasing the user base is one goal that we have, that we feel like will drive conservation and potentially also drives science, right? If we can increase our base of users doing the community science operation.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think you can really do, like, if you want to do action, for example, you do it over a like ongoing basis. You need to update the call to action changes every few months or whatever. But to have that, you ultimately need a, you know, community or a group of people that comes back together over and over again. And that's, I think, where increasing the users is about, you know, having that sustainable source of people who are involved.
I'll just want to say that I feel like there's a disconnect between like what they're saying about it all, kind of all these things that need to be done, the things that people need to learn. They're not about the sound analysis. Maybe they should be engaged through the fisheries perspective in a way. Because like I feel like that just even if people get interested, they start getting interested into the sound, and then that's why they're interested in the conservation in terms of ship noise and stuff. But maybe that's the wrong path. And in a way that they would not be those people. They would be the people who would go and track the ships, but they would not be the people who would go and like try to clean the water. Maybe want to teach them about water quality. But I just feel like it's a little bit.
There's so many things wrong that whatever you do is going to help. So, you know, if you decide, you know, I don't want to get near a plant, but I want to, you know, attack ship noise, then yeah, we need you. Or if you say, I don't care about ships, I want to plant things, you know, all of a sudden I have this whole new garden I can be planting things in. And yeah, we need them too. And, you know, they want to be political wonks and say, you know, I'm going to talk my legislator into flipping their vote on this bill. You know, we need that too. And, you know, I think, you know, my vision for Orcasound is that whales make really interesting noise and people like to listen to it. And if we have a web page that they can go to listen to sounds, you know, we've got their ears tied up, but they've still got eyes they can use for other things. And if their eyes take in messages for, you know, here's what you can do to help the whales. Because people are doing these things, we have hope that we can recover them. So, you know, let's go out and do these things. Again, social scientists may say, well, you know, if you reward somebody for being the most active or doing the most things or the best things, people compete with each other to do better, or, you know, you say, well, everybody else is doing it, I better do it too. You know, maybe having the counts of how many people are doing things. But I'm not a human behaviorist, so I don't know what the answer is for that stuff. We do figure out what the answer is, then that'll advance conservation in a way that hasn't been happening. You know, the last 30 years that we've realized southern residents are in trouble.
I am comfortable with the idea of increasing the user base as a overarching thing that anything you propose, we can look at it through that lens. Like, how is what you're proposing going to help increase the Orcasound user base? I think.
Can I suggest, I mean, I'm hearing that the root of all of this is conservation action, in which case increasing the user base is directly instrumental for that goal.
Yeah.
I would say it's actually conservation action is at the top and then everything else flows from there. I'd say increasing the user base is probably critical to the conservation action, but conservation is number one.
Okay,
and
so
then-
maybe it's like a goal and a tactic kind of.
Yeah, I guess so. But like, yeah, the primary reason for,
Yeah, so you've got conservation actions, why we're doing it, increasing the user base.
Why and
Gives
what?
us the bodies to
How?
take conservation action.
Yeah.
And then other things, how does this increase the user base? How does this motivate them to take those
we need
actions?
funding to
Yeah.
build more features
Yeah,
for
how
the
do you get the
users.
funding
We need
to
AI, ML.
Do all that
Yeah.
and, kind of start from your end goal of conservation and then look at the step before that of how do you get conservation to happen? And then look at the steps before that, how do you get that pre-conservation step to happen and work your way down the pyramid.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we should probably document that.
So not to complicate your trying to summarize this even harder, Adrian, but I also say conservation action to me feels slightly reductive because it's not a singular action, right? Like it's more about like an ongoing, it's like ongoing pressure. Right?
Conservation.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing like influence on to remind people that this is a thing, right? Orcas are a thing, they're around and they they make sounds and connection. And so I think it's, I don't know if action perfectly captures it, but it's also about just,
You don't have to hit people over the head with,
Yeah,
go do this thing. Like, I naturalist, you just post pictures and people identify them, but I guarantee that the aggregate impact is that people care way more about
that's what I
nature.
mean. It's like raises the general level of caring, right? That's where it really gets to. And what I'm saying, like,
It's
even,
consequential.
you see orchids in the news all the time, it not, it kind of organically pops up for me despite that I'm interested in it. And you just want to raise that baseline level of how much it's on people's minds really more than maybe more than the singular, like this is one action you take or something. That's also
And, the different groups can have different things they promote, like Orchid Conservancy is starting to get involved in a lot of habitat restoration. So maybe our page would talk about that and doing stuff inland. And the Sound Action is concerned about the near shore. So that's, the eelgrass and the kelp beds and things like that. So their page might talk about that. And Whale Trail doesn't have a site yet, but their concern is really with vessel traffic. So if they get a hydrophone going or set up a page, then they may focus on effects of disturbance. So the different sites could each have a different kind of message, and as the whales move around, people will listen to them and get the new messages that are associated with the groups working in different places.
So, I mean, one lightweight thing is as people interact on the site, to the extent that they do interact with each other, it may just be nice to know what organizations people are associated with. Like, so there's that sort of, what's the term for,
Dad, it's too
like
late.
trusting something more or being more willing to do it because of like social, if you see other people doing it. Where you talked about links and like how many people are going off to do it, clicking on a thing that makes sense, but also just like this person who's really involved and has said something interesting is a member of their local salmon, like habitat restoration group or whatever like that. To like, oh, like this is the kind of people I'm hanging out with now. Yeah, I'm getting picked up at 5, so unfortunately I have to run.
And I did it up.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh, I know, I.
So whoever's moving stuff around, I think the amount was ranked too low because it directly impacts user satisfaction if it's good.
Hmm.
It may not be number 1, but I think saying it's found on number 3 actually lowers user satisfaction.
And it does that by immediately identifying the thing you're listening to?
If it's immediate or not immediate, right? Because we talked about having access to stored ones too, right? The more actual calls that are available for users to listen to, the higher their satisfaction is. And the more real time it is, the higher their satisfaction is.
It also brings in users.
So do
I mean,
we.
the number one source of users is we're very hits based. Like when there's an event, That's when everyone,
Yeah,
we only have traffic when there's something happening mostly.
Yeah, and the sooner we report that event, the longer.
Sure, timeliness matters
Timeliness
because
matters.
Correct. Both timeliness and existence, right? If there doesn't happen to be somebody that does the report, but there's well as there, if AI catches it, there's gonna be, your overall number of detections go up, right? So that increases satisfaction. So I'm saying it should be up there, probably second priority, because it's a second order effect, right?
Like a Twitch TV versus.
Yeah, well, yeah, so that would be something that might be under increasing site traffic.
Correct. Yeah.
Conservation,
Yeah.
increase site traffic, improve MLAI to increase. site
Correct, right.
One thing I'm having trouble putting in my pyramid from, although I see somebody has put it in, is the ship noise studies. In my mind, we built a bunch of applications around signal detection and, building the community around these live events when a soniferous species is making cool sounds. Southern residents or humpbacks, I think both have been very engaging and big sometimes too. But using the hydrophone infrastructure for a whole separate user and application may be important from the Southern residents' perspective in terms of turning the knob on commercial ships, and maybe if we say it's vesselnoise.net and think about boat noise and ship noise. I do wonder, like, whether the Southern residents, if they were our board on the cooperative or had a voice, would be saying, are you sure that with just, your max listeners, when you're doing well, I think the record is like 200 simultaneous listeners. We haven't gotten there in 2024 for reasons I don't fully understand, but it has to do with how early you announce the event and how fast your emails go out and stuff.
People at home for
Virality
COVID.
is, how many,
People at home for COVID.
yep, and how many social networks are they part of? Like, maybe that's the way it was viral before is changing. But the point is, we're order 100 people at a time. So is that more important to engage them in local opportunities, removing dams, all the sorts of conservation actions we've been talking about? Or is it better to put our collective efforts, volunteer and paid, into building a better app for quieting ships? I don't know what the answer is, but
Well, again, I'm saying rather than having these things compete with each other, think about how do they stimulate conservation action? And one of the conservation actions is for ships to be quieter. So, we may have something that is a different pathway that says, report ship noise ASAP to Orcasound or RAS or whoever. And that could be one of those pathways in conservation action.
it's a good point. Yeah.
The increased, website traffic could be a different pathway into it.
Yeah.
When you're doing the ship noise, maybe that MLAI thing shows up in that place too, because that's going to be how we get to ships in the middle of the night when people aren't listening.
Yep.
Look at, maybe at some point you want to have an AI detector for ships.
Mm-hmm.
Something that'll report ships that are anomalously noisy or something like that. So that could be a different pathway. And since we're a volunteer organization, the volunteers will do what the volunteers will do. And, if we get a group of volunteers that are excited about ship noise, we say, hey, talk to Valentina. She's got work for you to do. And if it's, somebody who wants to drive web traffic, we say, hey, talk to Adrian. And, if we want somebody to learn whale calls, say, go to Dave and Brendan. We can have these different approaches trying to get to that peak on the pyramid. And, again, emphasize that whales are dying the death of 1,000 cuts. So there are a whole lot of things we need to do differently to help them out.
Yeah.
And for the most part, those are things that do not require a lot of expertise. There's, some population modeling and, sound analysis and things like that that require special skills. And, that's stuff people like me have to do. But, I bet Adrian's son could plant a tree as well as I could.
We'd like to run the YouTube live channel.
Yeah.
You can probably do that better than I can.
All right, so we're just about time here. The stream is no longer streaming, but we still have the Google Meet up. So, let's continue this conversation, offline from this meeting.